Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled, What if Nebraska chose Jimmy Johnson and changed college football forever? What if I told you Tom Osborne didn't fail at Nebraska and he walked away on purpose in an alternate timeline? Not because he couldn't win, but because he refused to win the way college football was changing. And when Nebraska chose a different path, they didn't just replace him, they hired Jimmy Johnson and turned the most disciplined program in America into the most dangerous one. No Miami dynasty, no same 80s power structure. Just one decision that changed everything. Let's set the table for the program that was too perfect. In the early 1980s, Nebraska was college football's gold standard. They were dominant, efficient, and respected. And under Tom Osborne, they did it the right way. No shortcuts, no flash, no nonsense. But there was one problem. They couldn't quite finish it. The 1983 Orange Bowl, a game that should have crowned Nebraska champions, instead became something else. A question: is Nebraska too clean to win it all? That question didn't just come from the media, it came from inside the program. And that sets the table for the pressure nobody talks about. While Nebraska stayed disciplined, the rest of college football was changing. Programs in Texas, Florida, and in the Southeast were evolving, with more aggressive recruiting, faster pipelines, and more influence behind the scenes. And Nebraska boosters saw it coming. They didn't say break the rules, they said adapt or fall behind. And that's where the fracture began. Osborne believed in development, structure, and long-term culture. But the sport was moving towards recruiting dominance, speed, and controlled chaos. And in this alternate timeline, that tension reached a breaking point in 1984, and that set the table for the decision that shocked the sport. This is where things could go wrong, because Osborne didn't get pushed out, he didn't fail, he made a decision. Behind closed doors, the message became clear. Nebraska needed a coach willing to take the next step into the modern era. Osborne wasn't that coach. And instead of compromising what built Nebraska, he stepped aside, not dramatically, not bitterly, just firmly. And just like that, the most stable program in college football was suddenly at a crossroads. And that sets the table for why Jimmy Johnson. Because Nebraska didn't just need a coach, they needed a direction. And the name that made the most sense was already in the Big Eight. Jimmy Johnson had taken Oklahoma State from irrelevant to dangerous. He recruited differently, he coached differently, he thought differently. Where Osborne built, Johnson attacked. And Nebraska made a decision that stunned the country. They didn't protect their identity, they outright replaced it. And that sets the table for the transformation, because this change was not subtle at all. Under Johnson, Nebraska became faster, louder, more aggressive. Recruiting increased. The offense opened up. The defense became opportunistic and physical in a new way. But something else changed too. For the first time in years, Nebraska wasn't predictable, they were volatile. Some weeks they looked unstoppable, other weeks they looked vulnerable. And that vulnerability changed everything about the Big Eight. And that sets the table for the game that defined the era, 1986. Stillwater, Oklahoma, Nebraska versus Oklahoma State. Jimmy Johnson against the program that made him. The atmosphere was different. It was not respectful, it was personal. Because Oklahoma State knew something no one else did, how to beat him. The game swung back and forth, big plays, mistakes, momentum changes. And late in the fourth quarter, Oklahoma State pulled it off. They didn't just beat Nebraska, they exposed them. And in that moment, the Big Eight changed. And that sets the table for the ripple effects. Without Johnson at Miami, there is no 1980s dynasty at Miami. The power center of college football moves to the Midwest. Nebraska becomes the villain, the headline, and the program everyone is chasing. But they're not unbeatable. And that unpredictability reshapes everything, from conference races, national rankings, to recruiting battles. Even the NFL pipeline changes because Johnson's influence now runs through Nebraska. In the end, this wasn't about a coach leaving, it was about a program choosing what it wanted to become. Osborne built Nebraska into something respected, but Nebraska chose something else in this alternate timeline. They chose to evolve, and in doing that, they didn't just change themselves, they changed the sport around them. All because one man said, I won't do it that way, and another one said, I will. And that is how Nebraska didn't just replace the legend, but they rewrote college football history in this alternate timeline. And if you enjoyed this college football alternate history deep dive, hit like, comment, subscribe, and check out the videos on the end screen. Now I'll see you in the next timeline.